Early box office projections are coming in for James Gunn's upcoming Superman movie that's set to release about 2 months from now. And so far, according to these projections, things are looking pretty good for the movie. Now, I'm not saying at this time that it's going to be a slam dunk for the studio, but if things trend in the right direction, it's possible that this could be one of the highest grossing movies of the year. Superman box office projections show James Gunn movie could outpace Man of Steel as DC Universe kicks off. Early box office projections for James Gunn's Superman show a movie that could fly high over all the lofty heights set by its predecessor. The upcoming DC studio reboot, scheduled for release on July 11, 2025, is currently projected to earn between $155 million and $175 million in its domestic opening weekend. So just keep that in mind. That's just domestically. Internationally, you could probably add another 100 million onto that conservatively if this is what they're bringing in domestically during its opening weekend. So a $250 million or so opening weekend for a movie like this is a pretty solid start, but it still matters whether or not people actually enjoyed this movie. Because if the movie plays well with audiences, then you could probably see this go on to make over $1 billion. But if it's a lukewarm reception or kind of a not a very good reception to this movie, then you might see a steep drop off. And even though it could probably still end up earning $600-700 million at the global box office, that may not be enough for a movie of this scale. And I will get more on that in a moment. But first, let's continue on with this. If the tracking holds, it would give Superman the biggest debut in the character's cinematic history, overtaking Man of Steel's $116 million start in 2013. Now, keep in mind, that's not adjusted for inflation right there. I just pulled up a quick inflation calculator. So $116 million in 2013 would be just under $160 million. So if it kind of had the low end of those projections at $155 million, it doesn't quite beat out Man of Steel adjusted for inflation, but $175 million domestic opening, yeah, that would actually outbeat Man of Steel. And that's kind of I think an important distinction in regards to saying how this did better or worse than the previous movie. The financial bar for Superman films is high, especially when accounting for inflation. Here's how the new film stacks up against its predecessors. So it has them right here adjusted for inflation. So the first Superman movie back in 1978, that's equivalent to $667.8 million globally. And that's oh yeah, so globally for the movie, Superman Returns back in 2006, approximately $700 million. Man of Steel, just over $900 million. So for this one, if it does kind of track along with those other ones where every movie just kind of makes more than the previous one, then this has the potential to be over $1 billion hit at the global box office, assuming it actually holds up. I mean, just judging by these ones, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a fantastic movie in order for it to hit $1 billion, which is a good sign for this movie because it kind of needs to hit that $1 billion mark in order for it to be profitable for the studio, given how much they spent on producing the movie. If momentum holds, this could become the highest grossing Superman film of all time, surpassing Superman Returns, Man of Steel, and Christopher Reeve's original, whether you adjust for inflation or not. Despite the fanfare, controversy has swirled around the film's budget. An official filing under Ohio's Motion Picture Tax Credit Program listed the production cost at $363.8 million, with Warner Brothers applying for nearly $37 million in tax incentives. However, James Gunn has strongly denied this figure, calling the document some weird form. Quote, I don't know if it's fake or if it's just some weird form an assistant in the Cleveland office filled out putting random stuff in the blanks, Gunn said. I sent it to our accountants and financial producers when it first came out a year ago, and no one knew what it was. I can tell you it wasn't anyone on our team. So he's not really saying, no, this isn't what the budget was. He's just saying like what's being reported isn't true. Now you can take what he's saying with a pinch of salt because James Gunn does have a tendency to lie about certain production aspects of his movie. So just because he's saying that that's not what the actual budget was, I mean, I'm willing to hear him out on that one, but it's like, okay, well, I'll still need proof. I mean, if that's not what the budget is, then tell me what the budget is. And he hasn't done that. And there hasn't really been any other indicator. So this is all we have to go by. But even then, this article points out that if you assume that that's not the budget, you can still, I mean, just looking at this movie, I think it's reasonable for people to think that they'd probably spend around $250 million on this movie. And then when you factor in the marketing costs and other things, then the total spend for this movie is probably $350 to $400 million. Now, if it's on the high end of that spectrum right there, and the studio only gets around 50% of the box office, I mean, that's domestically, globally, they get less than 50%, but let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that it's 50%. Then that means this movie needs to make probably around $800 million, closer to $900 million at a minimum at the global box office in order for the studio to be profitable. Now, if you look at the previous Superman movies that I mentioned, $900 million is what Man of Steel made at the global box office. So this needs to basically be the highest grossing Superman movie of all time in order for it to be profitable. Now, I don't think it's really smart for studios to shoot for, I mean, it's important to aim high, I suppose, but when you're setting yourself up where you have to break records in order for you to just make your money back, I don't think that's really a good business strategy. But many other studios have done that sort of thing, or maybe they're just thinking about this as some sort of investment because it is supposed to be what kicks off James Gunn's DC universe. So maybe even if they're not necessarily able to make money off of it right off the bat, they're still confident that it will ultimately be profitable when they start putting it on streaming and paid video on demand. Given traditional studio returns, usually 50 to 60% of the box office grosses, a break-even point for Superman would likely fall between $700 million and $800 million worldwide. Anything beyond that puts the film into solid profit territory and secure Gunn's creative direction for years to come. And the opposite of this could also be true. I've talked about in videos in the past about how James Gunn kind of needs this to succeed for him because the studio basically put a lot of faith in James Gunn trying to revitalize their whole DC universe. And they gave him pretty much as much money as he needed for this movie and gave him a lot of creative say in the final image of this movie. And if it doesn't succeed, I'm not saying that they're necessarily going to fire James Gunn, but he'd probably have a lot less slack in regards to making his future projects, and you'll see a lot more studio involvement and interference in the stuff that happens as a result of them not having faith in him because they gave him basically the keys to the castle and he fumbled it. If that's really if this movie doesn't turn out to be a huge success for the studio. With the domestic opening projected at $175 million, the film would need strong international momentum to reach that profitability milestone. So far, international tracking has not been made public. And then it's just talking about what I mentioned about how this is pretty much supposed to kick off James Gunn's universe and it needs to be hugely successful in order for the studio to continue to back James Gunn and his vision for DC movies. So could that actually succeed? Who knows? Right now, it does seem like there's a lot of positive hype surrounding the movie. They just released their last trailer, and you can see on YouTube the like to dislike ratio is pretty solid for it. It has quite a few views. So it does seem like there is an appetite for this movie, and from what people are seeing, they're happy with it. Now, personally, there was nothing about the trailer that got me excited, but there was nothing about it that made me think like, oh, this looks terrible or anything like that. It's not necessarily something that makes me want to run out and watch it opening weekend, but it's something that I would consider watching if their word of mouth for it is pretty solid. And right now, though, I mean, I seem to be on the minority on that one because there is a lot of people out there who are willing to run out and watch it during its opening weekend. So the only thing that can really hurt this movie, I would say, is whether or not people like it, because a solid opening like that, but like I said, it still has a long way to go in order for it to be profitable for the studio. If the movie turns out to just be awful, then I could see it not necessarily falling off a cliff, but it could go on to probably do pretty well at the box office, but fall just short of reaching profitability. One thing in this movie's favor, though, is the competition at the box office, because the biggest thing that it's going to be going up against upon its release is trailing the release of Jurassic Park, and also Fantastic Four is coming out. I think it's shortly after this one. And just judging by what Marvel's been doing in recent years, I don't think that they have to really worry about that being much of a competition for them. But Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Do you think Superman will end up being a big hit and make over $1 billion? Or do you think it's just kind of meander at the box office and fall just short of that profitability mark? Or do you think it's just going to be a huge bomb and this fall off a cliff after that opening weekend? Or maybe these projections are just overinflating it. Let me know what you think. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.